In this series, and exclusive to this channel, I'll be taking you through the evidence in full that Lucy Letby gave to the court during her 10 days on the witness stand. The purpose behind this series is to give you, the viewer, a full and factual understanding of the evidence presented to Lucy Letby during her original trial. What you'll hear next is Lucy Letby's cross-examination in court. This took place at Manchester Crown Court and was conducted by Nicholas Johnson, KC. Miss Letby, is there any reason why you cry when you talk about yourself, but you don't cry when you talk about all these dead and seriously injured children? I have cried when talking about some of the babies. That's your answer? Yes. You started giving evidence on the 2nd of May. Do you remember that? Yes. It's a long time ago now, May 2nd. Is there anything you said back on the 2nd of May that, now you have thought about it in the time that's passed, you'd like to change? No. Anything that you said a few days later that you'd like to change? Not from what I can recall now, no. And anything over the last 3 days that you have said that you'd like to change? No. So if I ask you later in this process about something, you're not going to say, oh yes, I made a mistake about that, I meant to correct it. Well, I can't say that definitively without going through everything that I've said, but at the moment, no. Now, some time ago, you created a document called a defence statement. Do you remember that? Yes. I'd like to give you a copy of it so you can identify it. I'm not going to go through it in detail now, but as we go through the evidence, we will deal with this document, okay? Yes. I'm going to give it to you in paper format, and if you haven't got a copy, you're free to remove it from this room if you want to. If you want to look at it, because I'll be asking you questions about it. Okay. This is quite a long document, isn't it? Yes. It runs to 28 pages. Is that right? Yes. Can you just go to the final page, please? Because I'd like to deal with what it says. It says, this defence statement is not signed. The defendant made additional amendments to the statement at a meeting on the 11th of February 2022. During this conference, however, the defendant accepted this document and the amendments as being an accurate summary of her case, and the court and the prosecution will be provided with a signed copy of this document in due course. Is that what it says? Yes. And was that true? Yes. Now, by the 11th of February, you had had most of the prosecution statements and exhibits for about a year, hadn't you? I can't recall the definitive dates of when I received everything from November 2020. Well, you were arrested in November 2020, that's right, isn't it? Yes. And a lot of, or a good proportion of, the prosecution documents were served in the very early part of 2021. Do you remember that? Yes. There have, of course, been various documents that have come through as the case has progressed, even during the trial, to be fair, haven't there? Yes. But you knew in February 2022 what the important features of the allegations against you were, didn't you? Yes. And one of the other things that you knew, and you'd had quite a lot of time to ponder, were the contents of your police interviews, weren't they? Yes. I'd just like to go back in the document, if you wouldn't mind, please, to page 5. It's paragraph 30 of the document. It's a single sentence. Would you just read the sentence to the jury, please? In general, I rely upon those matters I raised and explanations given in my police interviews. Yes, and that was your position, wasn't it, a year after your arrest? I don't know what you mean, sorry. You were accepting, a year after your arrest, having had a year to read the police interviews, you were accepting that what you said in those interviews, in effect, represented your case. It was accurate at that time, yes. Can you look at paragraph 203 of your defence statement, please, page 26. This is headed Items from the Defendant's House. In other words, your house. Yes. Can you read paragraphs 203 and 204, please? I've dealt with certain items that were taken from my house by the police in paragraphs above. I did not deliberately take any item from the hospital with the intention of keeping it. And 202? I did not deliberately retain a handover sheet from the morning of the 25th of June 2016. What did you tell the jury this morning about the handover sheet from the 25th of June? That I needed it for the next day to complete my documentation. Yes, that you deliberately kept it. Well, I'm referring here, though, to deliberately keeping it at my home address. Read the words for the jury. Which one? 202. I did not deliberately retain a handover sheet from the morning of the 25th of June 2016. That's not true, is it? Were you lying there, or were you lying this morning? I don't think it's a lie. I think I'm referring to the handover sheet not being at my home address for a deliberate reason. It was there for a deliberate reason. It, to use your phrase, came home with you. Yes. Are these active handover sheets? Do you understand what I mean? You're passive, they are active. Did they come home with you? Yes, the sheets have come home with me, yes. No, you take them home, don't you? Yes. Yes, they don't come home with you. You take them home. No, they've come back in error. They were not intentionally taken. Well, this one was, wasn't it? No, it was taken home with intent on that time, but it was not left at my home address with intent. Let's deal with your addresses, because when we come to look at some of these handover sheets, as we will, we need to understand where you were living and when you were living there, okay? Yes. That's the reason I'm asking the questions, because what I'm going to suggest to you, so you know what the objective is that you move from property to property and you take these handover sheets with you each time, okay? And so in due course, I'll suggest when you say you didn't know you had them, that's a lie, okay? Okay. So that's the purpose. So let's look at the facts. You're a student between the academic years of 2008-9, 2009-10, and 2010-11. Is that fair? Yes. A 3-year course at Chester, and you told us back at the beginning of this month that you qualified in 2011. Yes. So these are the traditional academic years, September to June, or what was the academic year on your course? It's a full 12-month course for nursing. Sure, well, a 3-year course, I think you said. Yes, but... Yes. What, you study for 12 months a year, do you? Yes. You're not the sort of lazy student I was, getting the summer off or anything like that? No. All right, and you, qualified in when? In 2011? At the end? September. September 2011, okay. For those 3 years, were you living in student accommodation in Chester? Yes. From your student accommodation, I'm not asking you where, but did you live in more than one place in Chester? Yes. Was it university accommodation? Yes. Did it change each academic year? Yes. The academic year, as you've just inferred at least, is September to September. Yes. All right, so when you got to starting work in October 2011, where did you live? At that point, I wasn't employed. I began my employment in January 2012. Right, okay. So you had 4 months or so trying to get a job? Yes. And in that time, were you living in Chester or were you living back in Hereford? I was at my parents' address in Hereford. Did all of your belongings follow you from Chester to Hereford? Yes. So you started in January 2012. Were you living in Ash House from the beginning? Yes. Did you remain in Ash House until the 15th of March 2014? I'd have to confirm the dates, but yes. I'm going from a date in your diary that was dealt with by Mr. Myers back on the 2nd of May. Okay. That's when you first moved into a flat in Chester? Yes. A flat of one of your colleagues? Yes. She was not living there when you were living there, is that right? No. It isn't right? Sorry, no, she was not living there. I lived there alone. And you remained there until the 1st of June 2015? Yes. So if anyone's keeping a note, the 15th of March 2014 to the 1st of June 2015. On the 1st of June 2015, you moved back into Ash House. Is that right? I don't remember the dates from my head, but if that's agreed, then yes. The reference in your diary, if anybody wants to check it, is J355. And again, it's a date that was dealt with in passing some time ago, but I just want to re-establish the dates. Yes. On the 15th of March, by coincidence, in other words, the same date as when you moved into your colleague's flat, this time the 15th of March 2016, you exchanged contracts on your property in Westbourne Road. Yes. You got the keys on the 18th? Yes. And on the 5th of April, you moved into number 41 Westbourne Road? Yes. Something you described yesterday as a massive life moment? Yes. I'd like to deal with your uniforms in which these handover sheets came home with you, all right? So that the jury understand what the system is, who provides the uniforms? The hospital. Who launders the uniforms? The staff that wear them, so myself. Yes. And how many uniforms are you provided with? I can't recall specifically, maybe 3? Okay. Would you launder the uniforms every time they were used? Yes. If you had 3, it would follow, wouldn't it, that if you were working in blocks of 3 days, as generally you did, not always, but generally, you'd use each uniform in succession? Yes. And therefore it would follow, wouldn't it, that every day, or at least by the 3rd day, you'd be emptying the pockets of the uniforms? Yes. What did you do with the contents of the pockets? They were put aside in random places in my house, such as... The random places. Which random places? I can't say. I would accumulate paper in various areas of my home, bags, anywhere. We'll come back to the handover sheets a bit later. So far as the computerized records are concerned, I want to ask you about those, okay? Okay. These are the medication administration time-stamped computerized records that I'm talking about. Okay. Do you understand what it is I'm talking about? Yes. There are, generally speaking, 2 people who contribute to those documents, aren't there? Yes. From a nursing point of view, the first contributor is somebody who is categorized as the user. That's what the system calls them. Yes. And the second is the cosigner. Yes. And again, that's the term attributed to the role by the system, isn't it? Yes. You have told us, and some of your colleagues have confirmed, that the relative status of user and cosigner doesn't actually inform the reader as to who it was that had administered a particular drug. That's right. But it does tell us who created the original record. Do you mean who prescribed the drug? No. I'll be clear. The easiest way of listing this may be for you to describe to us, if I, or if you were the user, what would you do to create the record on the system? You would have to log onto the Meditech system, which is what it's called, and enter your login details. Yes. The time of administration of the drug concerned. We know that the system automatically timestamps the entry, doesn't it? Yes. So the system creates the time, records the time at which this is being done. Is that right? It records the time that you log on. It then requires 2 people to sign for the actual time that the medication was given. Yes. But who is it that inputs the information as to the time the medication was given? Either of the nursing staff that have been giving that medication. But wouldn't the user do it? Put all that information in and then the cosigner? No, not necessarily. Well, you tell us how it works then. A nurse will log onto the system, and whether it's the user or the cosigner, they would have access to that and would input the details, and then the cosigner would have to verify that information. Yes. And so from a practical point of view, doesn't that mean that the person who's shown as the user is the person initiating the process? No. It could be either member of staff. Right. You can automatically put yourself into the cosigner role, can you? When you open it up, you become the... No. Only one person can log on at a time, so the user would have it up on the screen, and then the two of you would be checking that prescription. And where does the information come from that is input to the system, so far as the time at which something was administered is concerned? That's inputted by staff. Yes, but which of the two? The user? It could be either. Or the co-signer? It could be either. You have told us that you are a mentor for students. Yes. And what does that process involve? That means that we are allocated student nurses when they come onto placements, onto the neonatal unit during their training, and you're responsible for teaching them, carrying out paperwork and competencies they need to achieve. Yes. And so far as the paperwork is concerned, what do you tell them? What? I don't understand. What do you tell them about paperwork and their responsibilities? I don't follow. I'll give you an example. If one of your students had a handover sheet, what would you tell him or her to do with it? What are their responsibilities about the handover sheets? Students don't usually have a handover sheet. They aren't given documentation because they're students. Right. But if a student has a handover sheet, what would you expect the student to do with it? Discard it in the confidential waste? Yes. Why? That's normal practice. Well, it's normal for some people. Is it normal practice for you? No. At times it's not, no. Well, 250 times it isn't, that we know of. That's over many years, though. Well, if you do 50 a year, it's still 5 years. What is your normal practice? With handover sheets? Yes. To dispose of them, but there are times that they have come home with me in my pocket, yes. No, there are times you have taken them home. Not with intent, not with the intent of keeping them. If you were going to see Mr. Myers in his chambers in Manchester, and you accidentally picked up his phone as you left his chambers, what would you do with his phone? Return it. That's a hypothetical situation. It is, but you understand the point, don't you? Yes. Why didn't you do that with the handover sheets? It's a different context. Why? Because you're referring to a phone that belongs to somebody. The handover sheets do not belong to a person. But they have a lot of information on them, don't they? They do. Whose information? Babies on the unit. Yes. What are your responsibilities as a medical professional for sensitive personal data? To keep it confidential. What would have happened to you in a disciplinary sense if the hospital management knew that you had 250-odd handover sheets at home? I can't answer that. I don't know what the policy would be. Are you interested in the policy? I don't understand. Have you ever been interested in the policy on managing personal sensitive data? No. I'm not aware of what the exact policy is. You're not bothered, are you? I don't think it's that I'm not bothered. I don't know the full details, and these handover sheets were confidential. I know they're at my home address, but they were still held in confidence. Held in confidence? Some in a bin bag in your garage? That's held in confidence, is it? Well, I'm the only person that lives at the property, so yes. What about the ones in the shredder box at your parents' home? Who lives there? My parents, but they would not enter my room. They're not held in confidence, though, are they? I don't believe anybody would have looked at them, no. Do you obey the rules when it suits you? No. Do you like telling other people what to do, but you don't quite live up to those standards yourself? No. Miss Letby, yesterday you answered several questions from me on several issues. Is there anything that you said during the course of my questioning to you that you have thought about overnight and you want to modify any of the answers that you have given? No. One of the statements of fact that you made to the jury was that student nurses are not given handover sheets. That's right. Was that true? Yes. When you were a student nurse, were you given any handover sheets? Sometimes, yes, but the neonatal unit didn't tend to give them out to students at that point. Could you just repeat that answer, because I'm not quite sure I understood it? What do you mean? As a student nurse, yes, I had handover sheets from certain areas, but routinely the neonatal unit of the Countess at that time did not provide students with a handover. I just want to understand this answer. When you were a student at the Countess of Chester Hospital, were you given handover sheets? At some placements, yes. Some placements? Do you mean in different parts of the hospital? Yes. Well, all I'm interested in is the neonatal unit, so if you would concentrate on that. Were you given handover sheets from the neonatal unit? I can't recall specifically. You know where I'm going with this, don't you? Did you have any handover sheets at your house from when you were a student at the Countess of Chester Hospital? I couldn't say. I've got handover sheets. I don't know where they're from. Is that true? Yes. What was the first day that you worked at the Countess of Chester Hospital in the neonatal unit? 2nd of January 2012. As a student? When I was a student? I don't recall the date. It would have been between 2008 and 2011. I can't recall specifically what dates all my placements were. I'm going to suggest to you that the first day you worked on the neonatal unit as a student was the 1st of June 2010. Okay. And the reason I'm making that suggestion to you is that there is a handover sheet in your house. Or was a handover sheet in your house from that date? Yes. Are you agreeing with me? Yes. At the time that we're talking about, students did not have handover sheets. Why didn't you say that when I asked you the question a few minutes ago? That we did get handover sheets when I was a student, but the students no longer get handover sheets. I believe I did say at the time that the practice now is they do not have a handover sheet. Are you doing your best to tell the truth? The whole truth and nothing but the truth? Lucy Letby? Yes. Where was that handover sheet dated the 1st of June 2010? I have no idea. Did you have a keepsake box with roses on it in your house at 41 Westbourne Road? Yes. What was in the keepsake box? I can't recall from memory. One of the things in the keepsake box was that handover sheet, wasn't it? I don't know. I don't have any recollection of where the handover sheets were. I'm going to show it to you as the police recovered it, please. It's Exhibit WG3. Just have a look at that, if you would. Is that from your house? I can't say. I don't recall a specific individual sheet. No. Just take it in your hands. What's unusual about it? Pick it up. What's unusual about it? I don't know what you mean. It's a standard handover sheet. It is. But how does it differ from all the other handover sheets that you took home? It hasn't got handwriting on it. That's one difference. Another is, it hasn't got any folds in it either, has it? It's in pristine condition. Is this the original? It is the original. In the keepsake box in your house. Okay. You knew where you were keeping these handover sheets, didn't you? No. They're in several locations, I believe, throughout the property. They were. And there were 99 handover sheets from your time as a student, weren't there? In your house. Can't comment on that. I don't know how many there were. Does that sound about right? I wouldn't know. I don't know how many handover sheets I had in different locations until I've been told now how many there were in total. You are not, and you have not been prepared to tell the truth about these handover sheets, have you? The truth is what I've told you. I want to deal with a bit of evidence that you gave yesterday on the subject of handover sheets. If Mr. Murphy would help me, please, by opening up on the screens tile 331 in the child O sequence. You remember giving some evidence about this? Yes. And your explanation, I'm going to suggest, and I'd ask you to either agree or disagree, was that you took the handover sheet for the 23rd of June home, and the reason that you took it home was because on the back of it you had written down some details of drugs that had been given to child O or another child that you were looking after that day. Am I right so far? There was documentation on there. I'm not sure exactly what was on there, but yes, the handover sheet did have writing on it, yes. Well, I'll remind you of exactly what you said, seeing as we don't seem to be going in the same direction. You said to Mr. Myers, it's common practice that we will utilise the handover sheets. So we would write on the back of the handover sheet, and if something significant happens, we would just grab the nearest available paper or paper towel, something to write on so that we can then document retrospectively. Then Mr. Myers asked you this question. When in this note, and he's referring at this point, Mr. Myers, to what we can see on the screen, you finish left signing off drugs until tomorrow. Can you explain to us what that refers to? And you said, so I hadn't completed all of the documentation for the medications. So for the medications, concentrate on those words, please. And as I was back in work the next day, I planned to do it then. You were then asked this question. What was happening with whatever notes you had in between the end of your shift and completing writing up medications the next day? So do you agree with me that the essence of the questions and answers is that this is all to do with medications? Medication was included, yes. I don't know that that's medications in its entirety. And you said, I needed it for the next day. You were then asked the question, so where was it? Talking about the note. And you said, it came back. In other words, you took it back home. That's what you meant, wasn't it? I took it to bring it back into work the next day, yes. Where was it? Said Mr. Myers. And you said, at this point, in my pocket. And you confirmed that the notes were in your pocket. Then there was a bit of confusion between the two of you, and Mr. Myers said, probably my fault, you've got the notes in your pocket. You said something about left signing up drugs until tomorrow, which we can see on the screen. What's going to happen to those bits of paper? And you then said, they're going to come back to work the next day. By that, you meant you were going to take them into work the next day, didn't you? Yes. Yes. And Mr. Myers said, 23rd of June, you have the handover sheet which includes on it child P and child O. You answered yes. Then you were asked a question and the various notes on the back of that? Your answer was yes. Then you were asked a question, is that the handover sheet that you would have taken home with you at the end of the shift, if you remember? You replied yes. So that's the exchange between you. There you were, saying that you took the handover sheet home deliberately. Do you accept that? Yes. The reason for taking it home deliberately was because you needed it for the next day. Yes. And the reason you needed it for the next day was because you hadn't completed writing up the medications and you needed the notes on the back of the handover sheet to remind you of what you needed to write the next day. Do you agree with that? Or for any other documentation that still needed to be completed? No. The question and the answers were very specific. It was all to do with medications, wasn't it? Well, here, yes. I'm referring to drugs, yes. Yes. And the question and answers between you and Mr. Myers were referring to drugs, weren't they? Yes, if that's what it said, yes. Right, I'm going to show you the handover sheet, the original handover sheet. Just for the record, what I'm about to hand over is Exhibit 15, which has already been exhibited in the trial. It is, just in case these documents get separated, 4 handover sheets that were in the Ibiza bag. 23rd of June, 24th of June, 25th and 28th of June. Would you compare, and take as much time as you like, the original to the copy that we've just given to the jury, a version of which you have as well? And would you confirm that it is the same document, apart from the fact that the names of the children other than child Q, child O and child P have all been edited out? Yes. Would you now turn over the original and compare it to the second page that I've just handed you as a copy? Yes, it's the same. The same document, right. I'm not interested in the front of this document for these purposes. I'm interested in the back and your notes. You point out to us where the notes of the medications are you have made on the back of that document. There's a note about caffeine and child P. Right, so this is the top left, yes? Yes. Caffeine underlined? Yes. Right, okay. Anything else for child P? No. Child O? No, the drugs were written on a paper towel, I believe. The child whose name has been edited out? Who was the third child in nursery 2? There's no medications. So your evidence to the jury yesterday is that you took that home because it had caffeine written on it? And that you brought it in the next day to help you remember what? Caffeine? Is that the thing you're struggling? I didn't say that. I didn't say that I'd taken it because of caffeine. No, you said you took it for the drugs. Yes, with the paper towel that was also with it. There's a paper towel with it? Yes, we've seen the paper towel, haven't we? Well, there have been a couple of paper towels. I'm interested. You were answering questions about the handover sheet. That's why I started with reminding you of what your evidence was. Were you telling the truth to the jury yesterday? Yes. The Morrison's bag. When did that bag go under your bed? I can't recall a specific date when I would have put that under the bed. Well, give us a range of dates if you would, please. Well, the Ibiza bag sort of replaced that bag, so it would be after, just before that time, maybe, or after. So just before, so sometime around the 20-something of June 2016. I can't be specific, but the Ibiza bag became my new work bag, yes. Right, and in the Morrison's bag there were 31 handover sheets we've heard, haven't we? Yes. And they were dated between July 2014 and then April 2015 through to June 2016. Do you accept that? Yes, obviously I can't see it now, but if it's been agreed, then yes. I can produce the sheets. Would you like to see them? No, if it's been agreed. How did all those handover sheets get into that bag? They didn't get there on their own, did they? No. So you tell us the process between emptying out your uniform when you're about to launder it to those handover sheets ending up in that bag, please. When I've come home from work, I've taken my uniform off. The contents of the pockets have gone into the work bag. And where does the work bag then go on the next day, the next work day? To work. Yes. So what, you're ferrying handover sheets to and from the Countess of Chester? Is that what you're saying? I can't say definitively. Well, that must be what you're saying, mustn't it? I accept that they're all in that bag, yes. Well, they're all in the bag when the police find it. Right. What I'm more interested in is, first of all, why you put them into that bag at all. I can't recall. Can't? Or won't? No, I collect paper, just gathers. They were just bits of paper to me. You're not telling the truth, are you? I am. Why don't you want to tell the truth? That is the truth. They have no meaning to me at all. They're just pieces of paper. If they have no meaning to you, why do you keep them? Because I keep a lot of paper. I have difficulty throwing things away. I have copious amounts of paper, cards, notes throughout my whole life. These are no different. They're just pieces of paper that have been gathered and I've never done anything with them. Well, you have. You've put them into different bags in different places. Yes, a piece of paper, not because of the content. I've moved paper around my whole life. Oh, yes, you have. And that's one of the reasons I asked you the questions about where you were living at various points. Yes, I accept possessions come with me to multiple addresses, and that's including these handover sheets as well as many other handwritten things, cards, letters, notes. It's the paper that I accumulate, not the content. A question that the jury may be interested in is why? I have difficulty throwing things away. Is that why you bought a shredder? I did have a shredder at some point, yes. Yes, that wasn't the question. The question is your difficulty in throwing things away the reason why you bought a shredder? I bought a shredder for certain documents once I bought a house, yes. Right. Which documents were going to go in the shredder? Predominantly bank statements. Why not handover sheets? I didn't know I had the handover sheets. They were insignificant to me at that time. They were in your work bag, which was going to and from work every day. With lots of other paper as well. Where's all that other paper gone then? I have various amounts of paper at home of different things. No. Don't deflect the question. I don't know what you mean. Sorry. We're talking about the work bag. Where is all the other paper in the work bag? I'm talking about there's multiple handover sheets in there. Yes. So they're going to and from work with you every day. Every day when you empty out your uniform, you add to the pile. Is that right? I must have done. I can't recall specifically every day what action I took. Well, of course not on an individual basis. But what were you thinking as this pile of handover sheets accumulated to almost the size of a phone book? They weren't the size of a phone book in one area. I didn't recall that I had that many in different locations. Well, don't argue about whether it's a phone book or not. What were you thinking as these were accumulating, the handover sheets? Wasn't thinking anything. They're just bits of paper. So put them in the shredder. I didn't shred anything particularly other than bank statements. When did you buy the shredder? I can't recall an exact date that I bought a shredder. I'm not asking for the exact date. Did you have it in Ash House? No. So you bought it in sometime between the 5th of April 2016 and the date that the police knocked on your door? Yes. Why didn't you shred the handover sheets? Because they're insignificant. I haven't shredded a lot of documents in my house that could have been shredded. These are very significant documents, aren't they, Lucy Letby? Well, they are sitting here now. They weren't to me at that time, they're just pieces of paper. They have the names of dead children on them, don't they? They have the names of a lot of children on them, yes, and they shouldn't have come home, I agree, but they were in a home with me where nobody else was. They were confidential. They were just put in amongst a lot of other notes and bits of paper, study notes that I've kept my whole life. Are you really asking the jury to accept that pieces of paper with sensitive information about dead children are insignificant? Yes. I'd like to look at Child M's blood gas document, please. It's Exhibits 7 and 8. These documents were found in your Morrison's bag, weren't they? Yes. Are they insignificant? At the time of being found, yes. So a child who brushed with death, these are his blood gas readings taken whilst he was being resuscitated. You regard those as insignificant? I think the context is different. These have come home with me with many babies. They're not just for the babies on the indictment. It's not insensitive. They've just come back as pieces of paper and have ended up being treated that way, as pieces of paper. They haven't come home with you, have they? You took them home. I took them home, yes, but not with any intention. Why do you keep saying came home with me, as if they were active, as if they were doing the action? I apologise if that's my turn of phrase, but that's how I see it. Came, took, whichever. They've come back with me. I took them back, however you want to word it. It's you trying to separate yourself from a conscious act, isn't it? No. Do you remember what you said about these documents to your counsel a couple of days ago? About this specific document? Yes. No, I don't recall that was presented to me during that time. You were asked about it? Right. Okay, we'll deal with that first of all. Open it out to remind yourself of what it says. You were asked a question, did you use the machine? You answered the question with a question. You replied, at this time. Mr. Myers followed up with, during the course of what happened with child M. You replied, yes. Was that true? Did I use the blood gas machine for child M? Is that what you're asking? That was the question he was asking you? Well, I can't possibly say for definite. This is a printout, yes. Why would you have that item at home? Can you help us with that? You were asked. And as you do, you said, it's come back with me from work in my uniform. Once you've got the printout from the machine, what would you have done with it in real time on the unit? You replied, I would have put it in my pocket and then taken it to the cot side to then write up on the charts that we've seen, the handwritten charts. You would then ask the question that arises is why it doesn't go in the bin after that. Why doesn't it? You replied, that is an error on my part. Is that right, what I've just read out to you there? Yes. Was that true? Yes. Do you remember a nurse? Now this nurse is redacted, so we're going to refer to her as Nurse G. Do you remember a nurse called Nurse G? Yes. You know her very well, don't you? I know her as a colleague, yes. Do you remember what Nurse G's evidence was about that printout? No. Really? I can't recall that, no. We've heard a lot of information. I can't recall that, sorry. Well, let's look at tile 171, please, Mr. Murphy. What's the time on the documents you've got in front of you? 16:22. Do we see the results recorded on the blood gas chart? Yes. Whose handwriting is that? Nurse G. Do you now remember what Nurse G said about that blood gas reading? No. She said she took it, she wrote it onto the chart. Do you remember what she said about what she habitually does with the printout? No. What do you think your colleague Nurse G, she disposed of it? Yes. Where would she dispose of it, do you think? In the confidential waste bin. Yes. When did you fish it out of the confidential waste bin and take it home? I've never fished anything out of the confidential waste bin. How did you get it? I can't recall specifically. It was for your little collection, wasn't it, Lucy Letby? No. They could have gone in the shredder, couldn't they? None of the paper that I had went into the shredder. No. That wasn't the question. They could have gone into the shredder, couldn't they? Could have, yes. How much is a shredder? I don't think that's fair to ask. I don't know. You bought one? I can't recall specific date and time that I went into a shop and bought a shredder and how much that cost. Did you have money to burn? What do you mean? Sorry? Did you have so much money that you could just buy whatever you want, whenever you want it? I don't understand what finance has. Well, the jury may be interested, and I'm certainly interested in why you'd buy an electrical appliance that you have no real intention of ever using. Well, I did use it for bank statements. Yes. Why did you lie about the shredder in an interview? I couldn't recall that time whether I did have a shredder or not. A shredder is an insignificant item to have in your home. It's like the pieces of paper? Yes. It's insignificant? Yes. Do you remember the explanation you gave for what I suggest is, well, let's go to the interview just to remind ourselves of what you actually said. It's about 2/3 of the way down the page, so I'll just show you where I'm looking. It's page OA39. Do you see there is a time that says 000841? Yes. And you actually brought up the shredder as we look at the questions and answers. So if we go up about a couple of inches from there, you're asked a question just above halfway down the page. They're asking about the sheets. The interviewing officer asks you, do these sheets that are in your folder that you've kept at your home address, Lucy, relate to babies which you were designated nurse for? You replied, yes, they're all babies that are on the unit at that point, whether you look after them or not, so yeah. You would then ask the question, okay, have you previously taken any of these handover sheets home and disposed of them? And what's your answer to that question? I replied, no, I don't think so, because I haven't got a shredder, and that's how I'd have to get rid of them. So it's not the police suggesting a shredder to you, is it? They're suggesting ways in which I'd have disposed of those handover sheets at home. They've asked me, have I ever taken the handover sheets home and disposed of them? Yes. How is that a suggestion of them, the means by which you'd get rid of them? That's how I took disposal to mean, a confidential disposal. They never suggest shredder to you, do they? They don't say, have you got a shredder? No. To which you mistakenly answer no. They say, why haven't you got rid of them? And you say, because I haven't got a shredder. I couldn't recall at that time whether I did have a shredder or not. I'd just been arrested by the police. Locating a shredder wasn't on my mind. Well, the shredder was on your mind because you were the person that introduced it into the interview. Yes, in reference to the word disposal. Are you telling the truth? The whole truth and nothing but the truth? Yes, I am. Do you remember the explanation you gave to the jury on May 2nd about that question and answer? No, I can't recall all of the evidence that I've given. What you said then it's page 163 of the transcript, if anyone wants to check, is, it was an oversight. I'd forgotten that I did have one. I only acquired it fairly recently. What did you mean by that? That it was an oversight for me to say that I didn't have a shredder at that time and that I'd bought one recently in relation to the date of the interview. When did you buy the shredder, now that you've been reminded of the fact that you remembered it in police interview? Shortly before this interview, if I've said it was bought recently. There was a shredder box at your parents' home in Hereford, wasn't there? Yes. And that was in your room, as I understand your evidence? Yes. Did that box ever leave your parents' house, as far as you know? I can't recall specific locations of many boxes over the years, no, but it probably did move with me, yes. Moved with you? Well, this is a box for your parents' shredder, as I understood your evidence. Did I understand it correctly? The box in the wardrobe. Correct. Do you want me to show you a picture just to remind you? No, I'm okay. So, yes, I believe that was my parents' shredder, yes. Is there some doubt in your mind? I can't recall definitively all the shredders that were in the property and whose belonged to who. Did the Letby family have several shredders? No. All the shredders that were in the property and who they belonged to. What did you mean by that? I mean, recalling exactly where a shredder is or the box that you've kept it in or where it was bought isn't something that would be a date ingrained on my mind. I don't know where it came from or when it moved, if it moved. Just remind us, because I may have misunderstood what you said on May 2nd, but I think ultimately you settled on the fact that it was you who wrote keep on the box. Is that right? It may well be. It may well be, or it is, or... I can't definitively say it's my writing, but it does look like it, yes. Just remind us why you wrote keep on that box. To keep the box and the shredder. Well, what you said, because his lordship actually asked you questions about this, because I think we were all a little bit unclear on what you were saying on May 2nd, what you said in answer to questions from his lordship was this was an instruction to your parents to keep the shredder. Did I misunderstand that? No, so the box is labelled in relation to the shredder. But there's no shredder in the box. No, but it's in the house. Why do you need to write keep on something that's in your room in your parents' house? I can't answer that. Do you remember an answer you gave yesterday about your parents going into your room? Yes. They never go in your room. That's what you said? Yes, they wouldn't go through my things, no. So the question I would like you to answer is, if that is true, why do you write keep on something as an instruction to your parents when that something is in your room that they never go into? I can't answer that. Is the truth of it that you're making up bits of evidence as you're going along? No. Because we know, don't we, what was in the shredder box? No, I've been told, yes. Handover sheets? Yes. And that's why you wrote keep on the box, wasn't it? No. I want to deal with the card you sent to Child I's family next. That's in the fourth sequence for Child I at tile 296, please. This photograph was taken by you on the day of Child I's funeral. Do you remember? Yes. That was in November 2015, yes? I don't recall the exact date. At that time, you were living in Ash House? Yes. And for those of us that don't know the layout of the Countess of Chester site, how far is Ash House from the neonatal unit? 5 minutes. Is it actually on the hospital estate? Yes. Where did you write the card? I can't recall that specifically now. Well, you obviously went to a shop, I assume, or do you keep a stock of condolence cards? No, I would have had to have bought it. Right. That would have been when you weren't in work, is that right? Potentially, yes. Well, can you buy them in the hospital? No. Well, I don't know. Have you ever tried? No. Okay, so is the answer then, yes, I bought it when I wasn't in work? Yes. Thank you. And you would have taken it back to your accommodation to Ash House? Yes. And you would have written it at your accommodation in Ash House? I can't recall specifically when it was written. Well, do you write cards in work on such a sensitive issue? I can't say. This card was going to work to be given to a member of staff. I don't know when I wrote the card. Have you got time to write condolence cards in your busy life as a neonatal nurse? I wouldn't have written it on shift. No. So my question then is, why do you take a picture of it on shift if you don't write it on shift? I don't know entirely when it was written, but is this taken on shift, the photograph? Yes. 4:38 in the morning on one of your shifts. Okay, so the card is written. It's come to work to be given to the staff that morning that are going to the funeral. The question that I invite you to answer is, if this is a card you've written at home, why do you take the picture at the place that Child I died? I'll take photographs of the majority of cards and letters that I send, regardless of the location. You are avoiding the question, Lucy Letby. Child I died in dreadful circumstances, didn't she? Yes. Why did you take a picture of the card that you wrote to her parents at the place she died? Well, I can't say definitively 100% that's where the card is written. It was. There's GPS coordinates. And that can't be my home address at that time. I don't believe so. The evidence is it's the neonatal unit. So you tell us why you take a picture of a card addressed to the parents of a child who has died in dreadful circumstances at the place the child died. The place is insignificant. I take photographs of the majority of cards that I send. This was obviously taken into work to be given to the nurses attending the funeral. I've taken a picture, put it in an envelope, sealed it, and given it to the staff. So it's another thing that's insignificant. No, I think that's out of context. No, I'm asking about the place, why you did it there. And your answer, you correct it if you want to. Wherever I take photographs is something that I don't think is relevant. It's the fact that my usual behaviour is that I photograph things that I send or receive. Yes, you'd photograph it when you write it. I can't say that, no. I don't know that I photograph it the minute that I've written something. Did it give you a bit of a thrill, photographing it at the place that this poor, unfortunate child had died? Absolutely not, no. I want to clarify something with you about the nursing records. From time to time, during your evidence, you have been referred to the lack of any mention of you in a specific child's paperwork. Do you recall that happening from time to time? Yes. As Mr. Myers asked you questions, he would refer you either to the sequence or to the neonatal review. Yes. And point out to you, not suggesting he's doing anything wrong at all, to make the point that your name doesn't appear on a specific child's paperwork. Yes. The point of that is that if you're not on the paperwork, you have had no contact with the child. Have I understood the point of that correctly? Yes. Yes, so just so that I understand, and so it may influence the questions I ask you, are you suggesting that the absence of your name appearing on a specific child's paperwork, in effect, shows that you haven't had contact with that child? It shows I've had no contact in terms of documentation that's required at that time. We regularly attend to babies if they're crying, unsettled, things like that would not be in the paperwork. Did you ever go into the neonatal unit late at night when you weren't on shift? I have been to the unit on my days off, yes. Why? At times I went to see colleagues when I was on the intensive care course, or sometimes I've gone to finish documentation that hasn't been done in a day. So there are occasions, aren't there, Lucy Letby, that you were in that unit and there is no trace of you having been there? There would be a trace because I'd have to swipe to enter the unit. There's no other access. Are you sure about that? Yes. Well, let's look at the Child G's sequence of events. The first one, please, TOL 353. Just left work, last gas 7.0, lactate 9. That's you to Nurse P, isn't it? Yes. You were not on shift, were you, at 22:59 on Monday the 7th of September 2015? I can't answer that without seeing the shift pattern. Well, let's look at the shift pattern. I'm not asking Mr. Murphy to put this up on the screen because we have, of course, a paper copy behind divider 23 in jury bundle 2. It's page 3. If we look in the bottom half of the page, you have the September work pattern. Is that right? Yes. Were you working at 22:59 on Monday the 7th of September? No. This, of course, was the day that child G had projectile vomited out of the cot. Is that right? Yes. The 7th of September, you had finished work, officially at least, at 8 a.m. that morning. Yes. As a matter of fact, you had been in the unit until 10 o'clock that morning, hadn't you? Yes, if that's agreed, yes. Well, if Mr. Murphy would help me, please, by going to tile 185. That's a text you sent to your friend Jennifer Jones Key at about 2:15 that afternoon. Yes. Where you tell her that you didn't leave work until 10. Yes. So if that's true, it suggests, doesn't it, that you were in the unit for a couple of hours after your shift had ended. Yes, that's not unusual. I'm not suggesting it is. I'm just trying to get to the truth. If I suggest something's unusual, I'll tell you, okay? If we go back to tile 351, please, you've been having a look at child G, hadn't you? Yes, I've gone back into work to complete some documentation. Concentrate on the question, if you don't mind. You've been having a look at child G, hadn't you? Yes, I have seen child G, yes. If the purpose of going back in is to complete some documentation, why were you looking at this child? The documentation would have been in relation to child G. She'd been a sick baby. If you're in the unit, I will go and check on her. I think that's not unreasonable. If we go to the next one, please, that's Nurse P telling you that child G was going to Arrow Park, which we heard in evidence is true. Yes. The next one, that's the one I showed you a moment ago. Yes. Which broadly reflects, it's not exactly the same, but it broadly reflects child G's last gasp before you send that message. Yes. That's what it was intended by you to do, wasn't it? So you've been looking at her charts. Yes, or I've asked the member of staff looking after her for an update. Tile 355, Nurse P's response, and then on to tile 357, please. Nurse P saying she had a bad feeling. Your response, base excess, B-A-S-E, excess. So another reference to the gas chart. Yes. You then say, looking good. I think actually you're a couple of points out, but the gist of what you are saying is correct. Then 364, that's Nurse P's response. You next at 365, on today of all days. Of course, this was child G's 100th day of life. Yes. A big day for child G. Yes. 366, that's Nurse P's response. 367, she refers to the parents. 368, she's declining bit by bit. That was your view, was it? Yes. Tile 369, then your response at 370. There is no record, of course, of you going into the unit on the door swipe data, is there? I can't answer that. I haven't looked. Well, there isn't. Okay. I'm not going to go through the whole sequence to prove the fact that something isn't in there. I'm sure I'll be corrected. It may be in that period of time where there is no door swipe data. But as a matter of fact, I'm going to suggest to you that you wouldn't need a pass to get in, would you? You wouldn't. Yes, unless another colleague opened the door for me. You could ring the buzzer and say, I've just come to sort something out, and walk in. Yes. Yes, and your presence would be accepted as a matter of course, wouldn't it? If I had a legitimate reason for going, yes. People trusted you though, didn't they? Didn't your colleagues trust you? Yes, but to go to the unit at night, you have a reason to go. My question, though, is why did you choose to go at night, in the middle of the night, rather than during the day? Because I've been on a night shift. Yes. So I've gone in the following evening after having been in bed and finished some of the paperwork. You went in at 11 p.m. Would you usually do that? If you go in at night time, I've just gone in at that time. I don't think that's relevant. It's quieter at night. I don't know. I can't say why I've gone in at that time.